State and Society in the Philippines.
Patricia N. Abinales is one of the author of State and Society in the Philippines. He is a professor at the Center for Southeast Asian Study, Kyoto University. He completed his Doctor of Philosophy at Cornell University and worked on the Philippine and Southeast Asian politics. His research projects include the study of violence in Filipino elite and middle-class families and the impact of domestic politics on the American military present in Asia. Donna J. Amoroso is also a author of State and Society in the Philippines. She is a professor at the National Graduates Institute for Policy Study in Tokyo, where she directs the Academic Writing Center. She is also an editor of the Kyoto Review of Southeast Asia. She received her doctorate in philosophy in Southeast Asia history from Cornell University. The summary of the book. The book is about the state formation and the dynamic of state-society relation that shape the country politics, economy, and history all the way from the Spanish colonial period into the Marcos era. This book is divided into 10 chapters that are rich in documentation and narratives, as well as in-depth description and analysis of context, which are quite essential in understanding the new one of the Philippine state's revolutions and state-society relations. Chapter 1. Introducing the Philippine Politics. The principal concern of the book author is to examine the long history of institutional weakness in the Philippines, as well as the attempt to hurdle the state's structural fragility and strengthen its bond with society. They want also to stimulate thinking about why the Philippine states remain resilient despite its weaknesses, and why it has so far not ended up a failed state. Chapter 2. The Philippines in Maritime Asia to the 14th century situates the Philippines as a part of the maritime Southeast Asia. The author agreed that although pre-Spanish Philippines had less centralized politics compared with the other part of the region, it shares the same cultural and political attributes and ruling practice found in many early Southeast Asian states. Archaeological and historical evidence and records were cited to support claim about the early states formations. Chapter 3. New States and Reorientations, 1368 to 1764. The origin of the weak states in the archipelago were attributes by the authors to the balance of the power between the clerical and secular states officials during the Spanish colonial period. The first 2 centuries of Spanish colonizations, the colonial states essentials lacked the administrative and military control of the archipelago. The rival states building in Muslim South, particularly in Maguindanao and Sulu, which has pursued their own commercials and diplomatic ties with the large Islamic world of maritime in Southeast Asia. Chapter 4. State and Societies, 1764 to 1898. The author were quite successful in describing and explaining the changing nature, character of the state throughout the different period of Philippine history. During the high colonial period, the colonial states in Manila became more centralized as part of Spain's efforts to improve the administrative performance and its colonies. The reform initiated in Manila met with strong resistance from the friars, who dominated local states and societies alike. Chapter 5. Nation and States, 1872 to 1913. The states building during the early years of American rule sustains the rationalizing and strengthening of the colonial states, initiated by the Spanish through increased capacity in infrastructures and consolidating control throughout the territory. For them, the modern Philippine state is a colonial state's creation, as well as the nationalized imaging. At the time, they acknowledged that while the territorial relationship between inside and outsider was settled under the American colonial period, the issue pertaining to political exclusion remains unsolved.
Chapter 6: The Filipino Colonial State in the year of 1902 to 1946. The authors argued the focus of the state building shifted from the institutional concerns of the Malolos Congress to politics, the battle to capture the machinery of representation. The Philippine Assembly became the locus of power and the main venue for political socialization and consequently nation building. It is the period of the American Governor-General, Francis Borton Harrison, was tasked to implement the Philippinization of colonial state. Chapter 7: All politics is local in the year of 1946 to 1964. The Philippine state in post-war period was characterized by the author in varied ways. Number 1. The Philippine state was characterized as an ineffective state under Rojas and Quirino due to serious corruption problems, even though there was also evidence of professional governance. Number 2. The Philippine state was characterized as a populist state under Magsaysay, which used his popularity by mobilizing social forces. Number 3. The Philippine state was characterized as a patchwork state under Garcia and Macapagal, which was characterized by a mixture of plunder and professionalism. Chapter 8: Marcos, in the year of 1965 to 1986. During the Marcos period, the state took on different characteristics. Number 1. A patchwork state, where cupidity coexists with national commitment and self-interest overlap with reason of state. Number 2. A dictatorial state, which saw the height of the dominance over society and endured until 1986. Number 3. A crony capitalist state that was facilitated the capture of the state by vested interest under a capitalist system. Chapter 9: Democratization in the year of 1986 to 1998. Aquino sworn in as the elected president, effectively reinstating democracy following decades of the totalitarian rule of Marcoses. Ramos meant to focus on rebuilding and reshaping the economy of the country. Instead of a new economic tiger, Manila was known as the Asia's kidnapping capital. Ramos' admission that his government has failed to contain the crime that lacerated Philippine civil society reinforced public fear of the state's deteriorating effectiveness. Chapter 10: 21st Century Philippine Politics. The last chapter focused primarily problems and challenges faced by Estrada and Macapagal Arroyo administrations in pursuing good governance, political and economic reforms, as well as the emergence of civil society organizations and a restored democratic order. Current issues are presented in this chapter of the book as themes that need further study in relation to state formation in the Philippines.
The intended purpose and contribution of the book. In regards to improving academic life and to discipline the college planning literally, for those students who wants to take a history course, this book will help to encourage and inspire to deepen understanding about the Philippine state-society relations over time. The primary and secondary sources. The primary source of the books begin with the examination of the author in the Philippine history as a subject of historical study and comparing it to the history of the other neighboring countries in Asia, especially in the region of Southeast Asia. The secondary source of the book is from the newspaper, magazines, and wire services. The way of the author approached their topic, the rigor of the research and scholarship, the logic and argument, and the readability of the prose. This book took some time to write. Their debates happened on how to frame and interpret the state and society relation in many different historical periods. The author carried out a systematic approach. They work well in every details and narration throughout before it's written, as well as the sequence of the event in different periods. The book is undeniable long to read, but it is interesting and entertaining in the last. But the author didn't provide their tentatives. if not bold, assessment about why the Philippine states to this day remains resilient despite its weaknesses. The book remains usefulness and special contributions along with the shortcomings you think are necessary to find out. This book encompasses detailed knowledge regarding to the accuracy of states and society in the Philippines. It is not only for the historian, but it is also allowed to read to everyone beside its issue. This book can give us a knowledge about the history of the Filipinos and widen our knowledge about the formation happens in the state society in the Philippines. And also, it will help us to know the problem of the Filipino based on the past that happened not been fixed until now. Memorable aspect of the book. This book doesn't not only contain the history of state and society in the Philippines, but also there's a lesson that we need to learn.